My name is Peter MacConnachie. I work for Suncor Energy. My job title is Senior Sustainability Issues Management Specialist. The way I think about that and the way I describe it to others is that I'm sort of like the high beam headlights of Suncor, looking at what are the issues that are going to affect us 6 months, 2 years down the road.
Peter, what are oil sands metrics and why should we care about it? Well,
as I mentioned, I work in the sustainability group at Suncor, and what I've learned over the last few years is that there's a pretty poor understanding of oil sands. And I'll just focus on the Canadian public. The metrics will help people understand oil sands better, and I also hope that people will start understanding energy and energy choices and energy systems better. And if the metrics for oil sands move us along that path, that's terrific.
So what is a metric? Give me an example. What are we talking about?
There's lots of metrics. If you think of your own home, metrics might be kilowatts per hour, kilowatts per month, long distance phone calls, how many minutes per month, etc. So it's a measurement and often over time. In the oil sands business, we might use water use per barrel, we might use absolute water use, greenhouse gases, emission intensity. There's a whole, it's a way of measuring. Metrics are just a short form version of the word measurement.
And why is it important that we have this conversation at this point? We're at the Oil Sands Metrics Thought Leader Forum today. Why is it important that we have this conversation right now?
I think, as I mentioned earlier, there's a pretty poor understanding by the public. Talk just the Canadian public in general, and in addition, the North American public, around what oil sands are, what they look like, what do they mean, what is their actual impact, land, water, air, community, etc. So the reason we're here today is we're actually talking about the need for metrics on the in situ operations, which is there's really two parts to oil sands. One is mining, one is in situ. This is really just to figure out what do we need to do to get some useful, meaningful, practical metrics in place that'll help educate people. Not to advocate, just to educate.
And so how do we make sure they're credible? See, part of the problem is there seems to be a lot of debate about what the meaning of facts around the oil sands is. So how do we make sure they're credible?
Yeah, I think that's, to your earlier question, I think making sure they mean something to people. I think those groups, be it government or First Nations or community, they have to be involved in the process. It can't just be a bunch of industry people sitting in a room, nor can it be a bunch of environmentalists sitting in a room. We all have to come together and talk about, accept the fact that this is important and accept the fact that we are all going to sort of abide by these metrics.
So how will these metrics be used?
Well, I think at a company basis, as I mentioned, I work for Suncor, at a company basis, metrics are always used. We always say that gets measured gets managed, right? So if we know what our water use is, we're always going to strive to be better next year. So there's internal metrics. But the next level is what about comparing company to company? So if Suncor is doing well, I want to know that I'm always doing a little bit better than the other companies, but they're thinking the same thing about Suncor.
So will it, in a case of a company, will having a really clearly defined set of metrics help or hinder a company?
Absolutely, it'll help. I mean, the part that's interesting is companies are very happy to have they're very happy with other metrics, and that might be earnings per share, it might be capital cost, or a whole bunch of the financial metrics that are very commonplace that we're all used to. What we're talking about here is other metrics that are environmental and social that really complement the financial metrics. So it's not opposing, they're all working together.
So Peter, what is the role of oil sands, do you think, in a world where we're trying to reduce our carbon?
Sure. So, ultimately we do hope, the planet and society hopes that we're going to reduce our fossil fuels, our hydrocarbon fuels. And I think oil sands for the next 20 or 50 or some, maybe a greater number of years, will be a fuel that's used as I won't call it transitional fuel, because transitional fuels, people generally think of natural gas as being the transitional fuel. But I think just due to the availability of oil sands, it's going to be around for a while. So rather than everyone saying, no, we don't want it, what we should say is, how do we make it so it's got the smallest footprint, be it air, water, land, whatever, community, so that it can be an acceptable part of the energy mix until the next generation of fuels or energy sources arrive. It's important to remember that oil sands are an Alberta-centric energy source, but we really, I hope the oil sands metrics lends itself to a greater discussion around what are the other energy choices and what are their impacts. For example, Hydropower is a really low GHG energy source, but has a high terrestrial impact. Many, once at the very start. All energy sources have an impact. This is Oilsands' way of saying let's measure them so we can help communicate that to people better.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for coming to this event, and thanks for speaking with us.
Thank you very much.